Well, hey guys, welcome back to the cabin. As you can tell, it's a bit of a rainy day outside, so I thought I would kind of sit inside and do some editing on the videos. And you know, I've worked out all week pretty much. The rain kind of held off long enough for me to work on the carport some, so be sure and stay tuned tomorrow for that video, because I actually get the post concreted in the ground with the tops come off, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Anyway, what a friend of mine that I used to work with at Bell South, he would say, "Hey guy, it's story time." So I thought that I would share with you guys a story that happened about 30 years ago now, because I think it was around 1993 when this event took place. But that moonshine still that you see sitting over there actually came from a local fella that, yes, it is an antique because it's 30 years old, but it also was made by a legend in this area. A man by the name of Popcorn Sutton. If you don't know who I'm talking about, you need to look him up you can find him on the internet, on YouTube. They did some documentaries about him. I can remember when I used to watch him and living in Texas, and I remember watching the Discovery Channel, seeing him on the Discovery Channel, and then the long-running series now, which I guess has been about, what, maybe a decade, the Moonshiners. So if you haven't seen this channel, they talk about him, he was a legend in the North Carolina, Tennessee area, and probably eastern Kentucky as well, and probably southern Virginia, but all over the area. Oh, northern Georgia, let's say. All over the area, everybody knew the name of Popcorn Sutton. Except me. I had never met the man. You know, I was always working hard, doing my thing. Anyway, so I was working for the phone company, and we had an order that called to put in service in an area and to install a jack, which wasn't uncommon. Anyway, so I drove around for probably about a half an hour looking for this address. So after that length of time, I decided that I would turn the order back for better directions, which wasn't uncommon for an installer repairman to do. If they didn't give specific directions on how to get there, then the company would get back in touch with the customer and tell them exactly how to get out there turn by turn. Anyway, so on my way off of this road that supposedly this address was on, I was heading out to make the call to turn the order back, and I seen what appeared to be like a mailbox sticking out of the corner of some tall, like sage grass. So I kind of pulled the truck over, got out, pulled the grass back, and lo and behold, there was the address that went with this order. So looking up the hill, there was a small little valley, and then there was a hill which nothing but a bunch of trees, so I couldn't see anything up there but a bunch of smoke coming up out of the woods. So I drove up there, and there was the remains of a house that had burned, and I thought, well, they're not going to need a phone here, right? So I was turning the truck around, and I was going to leave and call back and tell the company that, hey, you know, this residence evidently burned, that they're not going to need service. And I happened to look in my rearview mirror, and I seen this little fella in overalls with kind of white grayish hair and a beard, and he was waving like this. So I stopped the truck, I backed up, and he said, "You here to put my phone in?" And I said, "Well, it doesn't look like you're going to need one now." He goes, "Yeah," he said, "the house burned down." He said, "That's the reason that I call this order in, because I got a place up here in the woods that I need to put a telephone." So when we walk up on the top of the hill, right there in the edge of the woods, he had a lean-to built, which is kind of like some of the stuff that I build around here, where he had some slab lumber like I use, nailed up on some trees, and he had some tobacco poles up where he had the tin mounted on top for his roof. Then he had some plastic lining the inside to keep any of the air coming out, and an old screen door, kind of like what I've got on the front here, like Grandma used to have. Anyway, so I told him, I said, well, the first thing we need to do is we need to locate and see if we can get dial tone from the road down there up to where it used to be, and I'll have to splice on a piece of wire to come up to this little cabin that he has built. And I said, but I can't really legally put a phone in there because I can't, bond to power. I'd have to drive a ground rod. He said, well, I'll sign a release. So I went down to the truck to get my locator to locate the buried line. He goes, no, 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 you don't have to do that. He said, I was here when they buried it. I know where it's at. I said, okay. I said, I'll be right back. So he goes over to the driveway and he stands on one side. You know how on a gravel driveway your tires on the car kind of make an indentation, you know? So he was standing right where the tire would be if you're going down the driveway on the right hand side. He said, dig right here. This is where they buried it. So I had a spade, or we called it a sharpshooter, with just a narrow shovel that's so long, you know, but it's very narrow. And I went to dig it. And I don't know if you've ever dug in a driveway trying to dig through gravel and everything. It's hard digging. So I'm digging and I finally get down about 12 inches deep. And of course my hole that I dug was about 12 inches long too, and the width of my spade, which was probably about 4 inches, maybe 5 inches at the most at the very top. So I didn't see it. And he told me, he says, move over that way just a little bit. So I began to dig, you know. I'd go over this way a little bit and I'd dig over this way a little bit. Finally I had about 4 feet ditch long dug out a foot deep, and we hadn't hit it yet. So this was, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes later. So I finally said, let me get the locator and I can tell you exactly where it's at. So it happened to be on the other side of the driveway where he said it was going to be, about a foot deep. And I didn't have to dig very far, but it was kind of in the other rut. So I walked down the hill, I got my battery, or my drill, my batteries, my drill bits, my tools, the interface, the jack, everything that I needed that the order called for, right? So I got everything hooked up. I took the interface, I mounted it on the side of the cabin up there, got the ground rod drove, got it all hooked up, had the dial tone sitting there, and I told him, I said, now we can save $28 if you want to take this jack off. He says, no, I want the jack put on. And I said, well, I'm going to have to go down to the truck and get a drill bit that I used to put the jack in. So I'll be right back. And as I turned to walk off to go to the truck, he says, hold on just a minute. And he motioned for me like this. He says, come here. And when I got up there close to him, he kind of put his arm around the front of me and he kind of pushed me back. He goes, stand back. He pulls out a 38 out of his pocket. He says, where do you want the hole? And I said, anywhere you want to put the jack. And he took aim and goes, boom, like this. I walked over to the cabin, I looked, I said, it didn't come through. He goes, get behind me. He's like, stand back. Boom. I walked over to the cabin, this time it had come through. So I run the wire through there, mounted the jack on, run it around there, got dial tone for him. And he was so pleased, this is no lie, as I was packing up, getting ready to go, we're going down there and we're just talking away, you know. And he introduced himself and I did myself the same way, and I was actually building the first cabin that my kids and I grew up in just down the road a ways. I was actually building it and had a 22-foot high ceiling, and he got to telling me that, you know, he made moonshine stills, even small ones, and he sold them over in North Carolina and as novelties. A lot of the tourists loved them. And I thought, you know, I've got this 22-foot high hearth that went with my fireplace. The back of it went up 22 feet, and it would look really nice sitting on that hearth. So he said, I happen to have one with me. He goes over and he opens up the back of his car, the trunk, and there was that little moonshine still sitting there that was just so cute. And I thought, man, that would really look nice sitting on my hearth. So I ended up buying it. I gave him $100 for it, and he was so happy. He said, hang on just a second, I'll be right back, I've got something for you. Well, he took back off up in the woods. Now he was gone about 10 minutes maybe at the most, I guess. I wasn't really keeping track of time. But here he comes back down out of the woods, and he was carrying a 2-quart jar of liquor that I probably had for 20 years. I had spoken with my ex-wife a number of years ago, and she had told me that the jar ended up, it looked like it had a bug in it, so she threw it away. And I told her, I said, well, that bug was sterilized. Because I'll tell you what, folks, that jar of liquor, I only busted the cap on it a time or two, and one time was for me to give my great uncle, who has now passed away, something. He had a terrible cough, you know, and I know that my family used to mix Seventh Crown with some lemon juice and some sugar and a little, I mean, honey. They used that in the place of sugar. Honey would kind of make a cough syrup. And so then they would put that Crown 7 in there, and it would kind of act like NyQuil, you know, to make you a little bit drowsy and you could rest better. So, you know, that really honored me, so to speak, that I did a good job putting his phone in there, and he was so happy that, you know, he wanted to give this to me. But anyway, so I had, like I said, that thing for about 20 years, and then the ex-wife told me that she actually threw it away and got rid of it. Anyway, this little still right here, I've had for, like I said, about 30 years, and it has been around, let me tell you. Well, friends, it looked like it quit raining. I might be able to get out here in an hour or so and get something done. But yeah, if you haven't checked out on YouTube, go and look up the last damn run I will ever make. I believe maybe the last video that he made before he passed away, but I've probably seen it a half a dozen times. It cracks me up every time I see it. It's a great video. I think you'll enjoy it. Also, you could probably look it up on the Discovery Channel if you've got that. I know that there were several documentaries done. And then you've got the Moonshiners channel, which you can tune into that and catch those episodes as well. Anyway, hope that you enjoyed that little rainy day story time, like my buddy used to say, here in Tennessee. So I think I'll just sit right here and enjoy the rest of my tea. You know, speaking of stories, we had this little fella by the name of Decker who this past summer had an incubator he wanted for Christmas, and he hatched some eggs into Leghorn chickens. Anyway, if you like these kinds of stories, you can click up here in the top right hand corner, and he will tell the whole story on this video of how he hatched and those chickens were raised. Folks, we really appreciate you stopping by. Y'all take care, and we look forward to seeing you back up here at the cabin again next time.